And we are live. Welcome to Tonight in America. I'm your host, Dontarius Jones. We have an exciting show tonight for everyone. Want to welcome you back to a Friday night. Well, technically a Saturday. It's 12:17 a.m. Want to welcome everyone to tonight's show. Apologize, I was taking a shower to get ready for the show. I was supposed to try to start it at 10 and make sure the sound sounds good for everyone before we continue. All right, the sound sounds pretty good. So tonight, our main feature story tonight, we're talking about the war in Venezuela. Well, the impending war, basically. So if everyone's pretty much is already aware, it hasn't been getting much media coverage the last couple of weeks, but now it's starting to heat up. Now these previous weeks, now that the talks about this impending war with Venezuela has heated up. Whereas we have many things going on. We've had repeated, like we have, I'm not even kidding when I say this. Oh, let me turn off that sound right quick. We've had 8 bombings of boats that have came out of the Venezuela shore. 8 bombings of boats. Now, the United States government has claimed these are narco terrorists that are coming out of Venezuela. Other sources have contradicted, saying that the United States government hasn't provided evidence at all to show that these are narco terrorists on the boat. And many in the Venezuela government, along with the civilians, have said that those are average Venezuelans who have no ties to drug trafficking at all. And they were all fishermen for the most part. But the Trump administration has been dead set on confirming and saying that those are narco terrorists that have left the sea that are Trinidad, well, you might add, that which is the United States' main focus, and the cartel of sons, which I will go over later, who really is the cartel of sons. But the United States government has been adamant that the boats, all the 8 boats that they've bombed, that all the innocent lives that they've taken have all been narco terrorists. We still have no confirmation of that whatsoever from any side. I'm open to possibilities. So I'm not gonna sit here and say that, hey, I'm not gonna just say I believe one and I believe the other until I see more details. I can't really take a side on any of this stuff right now. So I don't know for sure if they are narco terrorists at all, but it's very clear that these bombings mean something. All of this conflict so far means something. And what is that something that exactly is it meaning? It means that the United States government is pushing towards a regime change in Venezuela. And why is that? Why are they pushing for Venezuela, a regime change in Venezuela, considering that these last couple of weeks, Maduro has been very open to having diplomacy with the United States government, but Trump has, as just as recently as last week, has just shut down any chance of diplomacy and says no more diplomacy, and that the guy that was in charge of the diplomacy between the United States and Venezuela was told there would be no more talks with the Venezuela government from thenceforth and on, as the language has gotten more and more aggressive towards Venezuela, and then as recent as today, there is a big shipment heading towards Venezuela shore to commit to a full-on military strike against Venezuela in the end result of committing to a regime change. So we're gonna recap a little bit. I have a video right here for you guys called "Crisis in Venezuela: Maduro's Ongoing Power Struggle." We're gonna go over everything about Venezuela, and then I got a couple of articles here, some more videos we're gonna watch. That way we can get it, so I can give you guys a better understanding of how serious this is, because this is very serious right now. This is not a something to be taken lightly. It's very clear that the United States government is very serious about this, and the main front runner pushing for regime change is not even the president. The president is being one of the big vocal ones in here, besides Pete Hegseth, the Department of War secretary. But the main driver of regime change in Venezuela has been Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State. And the reason for that is because he has family from South America. He is a he is a first generation immigrant because his family originally came from South America, came from Venezuela. He has very much has history tied back to that land, even though he wasn't born there. But the reason was because his family fled from Venezuela to come here to get away from quote unquote authoritarian tyranny. So as you can see here, we gotta have a video right here. I've already talked about the Venezuela conflict, but now that everything's been heating up so much, I had to jump right back into it to talk about this. I'm gonna have a chill stream tomorrow on Saturday for you guys. It's gonna be a good one. It's gonna be around 5 o'clock. I'll try to be on time for that one. I'm going to cover some of the Gaza stuff tomorrow as well. Get caught up on that. I need to read more about that. The main thing I've been reading about is this Venezuela stuff. But I'm going to read some stuff to get caught up on the Gaza ceasefire, and we're going to talk about that recent strike that happened last Sunday between Hamas and Israel. I did say I will cover that today, but I'm probably not going to be on stream for too long. I kind of got other stuff to do. But we're going to jump right into this right now. And yeah, so we're going to jump into this, and we're going to touch up on some articles that I find interesting to bring up to the conversation about this whole entire ordeal that's going on.
This story begins just 9 days after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, as an American delegation makes a discreet landing at the airport in Caracas, the capital of Venezuela. They have a face-to-face meeting with the president, Nicolás Maduro.
When Russia invaded Ukraine, Nicolás Maduro used oil to gain new influence on the political world stage. In publicizing this meeting with the United States, Maduro wanted to show that Venezuela could replace the supply from Russia.
Russian oil had just been embargoed by the West. The universal concern is that the cost of oil...
What the hell happened? Why is the subtitles in a different language? It's in Indonesian. Let me do English, guys.
...will skyrocket as a result.
What was really on the mind of the White House was they wanted to get oil prices down. Their point of view with
John Bolton. Oh, we already spoke about this guy. This guy is guilty as fuck right now. This neocon hawk is guilty. Okay, we've already spoken about John Bolton, as you guys can see. You can find that video. I believe that one was my previous episode. Let me see. Yep, indictments handed out. Are John Bolton and Letitia James guilty? Yep, you can watch that as my previous video. I did that like 2 days ago. So you guys can check that one out. And but anyways, not to beat a dead horse over its head about him right now, but let's just say this guy right here handling classified information wrong, and then basically doing his own type of security clearance by giving access to secret type of national security advisor information to two people that have no clearance. His wife and daughter, I'm referring to. And this guy is definitely now he just had his date in court and he pleaded not guilty. Funny enough, Letitia James also pleaded not guilty too as well. So those court battles are going to continue on. And once we get some more updates about this, we're going to jump back into it and cover some more of it.
the war against Ukraine already underway. If they could get more Venezuelan oil onto the market before the 2022 election, Biden would not suffer politically.
It was a historic diplomatic U-turn for U.S. diplomacy. For almost 25 years, the U.S. and Venezuela were foes. The tone was unrelenting.
Virtually everywhere, socialism or communism produce suffering, corruption, and decay.
Donald Trump, hands up Venezuela. De inmediati.
The U.S. put a price on Maduro's head. They were hellbent on ousting this hero of the socialist revolution.
That's important. Let me go back right quick.
The U.S. put a price on Maduro's head. They were hellbent on ousting.
As you can see right here, this is the reward for him because they charged him as if they basically are saying that Nicolas Maduro is the head of a Venezuelan cartel. Basically, he's the head of Tren de Agra, and he's also the head of this supposed cartel of sons. I don't know how you pronounce it in Spanish. I'm not that fluent in Spanish, but they basically have charged him, in the United States, and now they are wanting someone from the Venezuela government to arrest Maduro and extradite him here to the United States to stand trial. Of course, that hasn't happened yet. And so this reward right here, you see right here, this wanted reward that's for Maduro, is gone up from 15 million to 50 million right now, currently speaking. It stands at 50 million. And by December, if the one turns them in, I believe that's going to raise up even more. It's probably going to shoot up to 100 million. I predict. I predicted it's going to shoot up to probably 200. Some probably all the way to sometime next year. But it's very clear that they are very adamant about committing to a regime change in Venezuela. But as history shows us, when it comes to regime change, especially in countries that the United States have been involved in, is destabilize these countries. Especially now that I know that Trump has authorized the CIA to be active, to go and participate, basically in commencing some I guess I'm assuming espionage in Venezuela.
Hosting this hero of the socialist revolution.
But Maduro's grip on tyranny will be smashed and broken.
Maduro's opponents consider him the gravedigger of Venezuelan democracy.
Soldiers stopped me from going into parliament. I had to climb the gate.
His country is bankrupt. There were assassination attempts, but he held his grip on power.
We all underestimated him. He's very astute, as is shown by the fact that he's still in power.
Sanctioned by the international community, all he has had to rely on are his allies in Russia, China, and Iran, and his immense oil reserves. But when he appears to be vanquished, he rises like a phoenix from the ashes.
Queriendo correr ya gateaba, queriendo de todo chillaba, mi papá vivía de artesanía.
This reminds me of that show what's that show on Netflix called Narcos? Like, it's giving me that vibe of Narcos right quick, because you know that how these Spanish, like those old school days, like when the cartel was in its prime, you know, they're always wearing the khaki pants, the nice dress shirts, always tucked in. You know, they dress nicely for a bunch of violent criminals. Like, they're gonna chop your head off, but they're gonna look nice at the same time while they do it. That's exactly what this reminds me of. This little recap video of old school Venezuela.
In 1970s Venezuela, the American dream was in full swing. The country was then the richest in all of Latin America.
And that's very true in due part because of its oil. Its oil made it one of the richest. It was like top 3, I believe, at this time. Venezuela was very rich during this moment because it's due in part because of their oil.
Thanks to its oil reserves.
People nicknamed it the Saudi Arabia of Latin America. Venezuela was the biggest exporter of oil in the world. Everyone lived off oil, as in all the big oil powers. It was the driver of the country's economy at the time.
Remember, before 1976, most of Venezuela's oil production was controlled by the major international oil companies, Texaco, Exxon, Chevron. When I was in Venezuela for the first time, I could sit in my apartment building and watch the oil tankers coming in and out. Venezuela produced 3 million barrels of oil a day. It was a tremendous money-making operation for the Venezuelan government.
For the United States, the country was invaluable as an ally. And all the while, Venezuela drilled more and more wells. The country had immense wealth, but its distribution was profoundly unequal.
Caracas was a big threat.
As you can see, it's so drastically different today compared to if you see photos of like how Venezuela looks right now, currently speaking. The country's gone through its fair share of a very long-term downward spiral compared to how it used to look before. Venezuela used to be like, it used to basically just be a powerhouse country, like being one of the top 3 richest countries right now. Used to be. Now, currently speaking, it's unrecognizable because, like, and that's in due part because of the drug cartels and whatever. But like, look, I'm not gonna get too far ahead of myself because I don't want to overtalk most of what this video is gonna go over. But yeah, it's in due part because of corruption for the most part. Like, it's mainly corruption, especially in the highest military and presidential parts of Venezuela. Venezuela is basically in the position that it's in is because of the corruption of the country. So That's why this country has gone through its somewhat of its worst downwards periods ever, to the point now it's like one of the most poorest countries out there, even though they have one of the richest oil reserves of any country really in the world. Literally, they have some of the best oil.
City as
And that's what Maduro's hoping to try to reel in Trump for a chance at diplomacy instead of going to war.
from Maracaibo and Valencia, but next to them was a large number of favelas in very poor areas. The immense wealth wasn't reaching the population.
For the majority of the people, poverty was overwhelming. This deep-rooted inequality would prove to be fertile ground for an uprising that would bring the system to its knees. The hour of revolution had come. And leading the charge was Colonel Hugo Chavez.
Hugo Chavez is he's the former president of Venezuela. Being the former president of Venezuela, this guy, he died in his position, and then Nicolas Maduro took over right after him.
After an aborted coup attempt, Hugo Chavez won the presidential election in 1998 and launched his socialist revolution.
Socialism.
And beside him, out of the limelight, stood his future right-hand man, Nicolas Maduro. Chavez wanted to transform the country, and he was counting on oil to fund his ambitious social projects. He installed one of his close associates at the top of the oil industry. Rafael Ramírez would become one of the most powerful people in the country.
Si bien el petróleo fue durante muchos años un instrumento para la dominación, ahora con la revolución bolivariana, el petróleo se ha convertido en un instrumento de liberación de nuestro pueblo. Independencia y patria socialista.
Thanks to oil money, more than 9 million families had access to social housing built by Chavez. Going to university was within reach for working-class people for the first time.
We brought the poverty rate down from 70 to 7%. These were incredible social advances.
Hugo Chavez turned global politics upside down. Nicolas Maduro became his Minister of Foreign Affairs, orchestrating close relationships with Cuba, Russia, and Iran.
I knew Nicolas Maduro.
It's also key important to also say that Venezuela is part of BRICS too as well. You know, part with Russia, Iran, and China. They're part of that. Basically, is the equivalent to NATO. If you look at NATO, for the United States, what does China have the equivalent to NATO? They have BRICS. They have the other remaining allies that are not part of the NATO allies. So is basically but it's kind of complicated because like you look at, do they really have each other's backs at the end of the day? Because when I look at NATO as more of like doing what the United States wants them to do in some ways, but then at the same time, I also look at BRICS as not really being a cohesive unit. Because when that little 12-day war was going on between Israel and Iran, China nor Russia jumped in to really assist Iran. And well, really, because Russia has got the Ukraine war going on still, even to this moment, and China really they really had true no benefit to really just jump in and include themselves in that little skirmish between Iran and Israel, even though that's not really over with. That's not really guaranteed to be over with. At some point, that's going to continue. That's already set in motion. But the moment, what I'm saying is, when you look at NATO and the United States, how their allegiance together is, like, say the United States get attacked, the NATO allies are expected to jump in immediately. Compared to BRICS, they just don't seem like a cohesive unit and stuff. This is why, like, say there is a regime change that happens in Venezuela, I don't think Russia, Iran, or China is going to jump in to prevent this.
When I was a young officer in the security detail of Hugo Chavez, at that time, Nicolas Maduro was elected as a member of the National Assembly. Then he became president of the Assembly. And finally, he was appointed as Minister of Foreign Affairs. For Chavez, he was his errand boy.
But Hugo Chavez's health was failing. In December 2012, his illness, cancer, pushed him to name a successor.
Buenas noches, Venezuela. Buenas noches a todo el pueblo venezolano.
Around the table, he assembled his closest disciples. Next to Chavez and Maduro was Oil Minister Rafael Ramírez.
Ustedes elijan a Nicolás Maduro como presidente de la República Bolivariana de Venezuela. Yo se los pido desde mi corazón. Viviremos y venceremos. ¡Viva Venezuela! ¡Viva!
A few days later, Hugo Chavez got on a plane to Havana, never to be seen in public again.
That was when he died.
3 months later, his state funeral became an election campaign platform.
Le juro venir aquí como presidente constitucional de la República Bolivariana de Venezuela.
Nicolás Maduro won the election by a hair's breadth, with 50.6% of the votes. In a twist of fate, he defied his detractors' predictions and became president of the republic.
Mr. Maduro, a man who was selected to be vice president because he did not have the intelligence, the ability, the talent, the skill to be a threat to the sitting president, finds himself now as the president of Venezuela.
That's a key point to take in. So basically, they looked at him as not even being a fit for president of Venezuela. He just basically got it because of doing part of a tragedy. So it's kind of crazy. Like, he had luck on his side, basically.
In the beginning, no one would have bet on Nicolás Maduro, who began his career driving a bus.
Nicolás Maduro started off working at the transport company in Caracas. This allowed him to construct the myth of Nicolás Maduro, the bus driver, to position himself as a worker president. Top student in Venezuela.
Lost signal for a moment. Back. Forgive me, everyone. We lost signal for a moment.
Del régimen comunista cubano.
Maduro was inspired by Cuba from a young age, ultimately applying methods he admired from Castro's regime in his own.
I was appointed as director of SEBIN,
El Servicio
the
Bolivariano
Bolivarian National Intelligence Service.
Policía Política. Sin
It's the
embargo,
political police, the police force Maduro uses for his own ends.
para Maduro,
It is for him what the Gestapo was for Adolf Hitler.
para Adolfo Hitler. Maduro me dice a mí tienen que llegar a perfeccionar.
Maduro tasked me with enhancing our intelligence services to such a level that every government opponent was under surveillance. He wanted to know in real time what everyone was doing. Sometimes he would jokingly ask, "So what did he have for breakfast this morning?" He gave me the means to get that kind of information.
Starting in 2018, General Manuel Christopher Figuera became the watchdog of the regime. From arbitrary arrests to torture, his officers were accused of serious human rights violations. But tracking regime opponents wasn't his only responsibility.
Mr. Maduro does not have a great deal of respect from the other members of the Chavista movement, particularly the military officers do not think highly of him, but also the long-term Chavistas, they saw him as a lightweight.
Generals, ministers, officials, no one escaped surveillance by the now paranoid regime, especially not its rivals.
This guy right here is dead set on keeping power to the day he dies. Like, he's prosecuted some of his own political rivals, and then he's banished others. So this guy's dead set on not losing his power at all. Like, he's dead set on being president of Venezuela probably to the day he dies, because like I believe he's been he's won like what 3 elections, I believe, or 4. Let me see, maybe fact check that right quick. So I believe he's been, how many times he's won elections. I want to make sure I give the right information for you guys. Okay, so I got phone 3. The last one was very controversial too as well. So the last election that he won, even to this day, people don't even think that he won the election. So, okay, so here goes the door. Let's see, quick facts. Trying to find out where exactly did he win? How many elections did he win? Because I know it was 3. Trying to make sure it was 3. What the hell happened to my stream? What happened? What the fuck? Says here we offline. Oh. Stream suspended. What the fuck? Bro. Are you serious? Bro, they suspended my stream for policy. Bro, that's crazy. They suspended my stream. Bro, they suspended my stream. That's crazy. All right, I'm still on. I think I'm still up on Rumble. You're still live on Rumble? Yeah. Bro, that's so fucking gay. They suspended my stream. Bro, YouTube is so fucking gay. Oh, we back up. We back up. We back. We back. We back. What the hell happened? All right, so anyways. I was trying to find how many elections did Nicolas Maduro run. They win. Bro, that was crazy. All right, so give me a second. Give me a second. So okay, so it was 3. So I just wanted to make sure that was right. So it was 3 elections that he won. I don't know why the hell I thought it was 4. Make sure the stream's back up working. All right, so I wanted to make sure. So he's won 3 times now so far. The last election that he had was very controversial to the point no one thought that there was a legitimate election. The numbers came out, the election numbers, the voting numbers came out, and they was like, it seemed like his opposition, which was, I think he ran against some woman, I believe. I forgot her name off the top of my head, but the woman that he was running against had won the election against him, but Maduro still was elected as president because of, say, there was some cheating involved. And now he's basically, I believe she's in hiding right now because Maduro is trying to prosecute her. And she's very right wing, and she's an avid supporter of Israel too as well. Very avid supporter. Like she was in favor of Donald Trump moving the capital of Israel to Jerusalem. So, but yeah, that's just basically what I wanted to say is that, yeah, so Maduro's last election was very controversial to the point where people don't believe he's a legitimate leader. And that's basically what the Trump administration's rhetoric's been. You know, they've been calling Maduro an illegitimate leader. Say he's not really the president of Venezuela. He is a phony. He's a fraud. So let's go ahead and continue on.
Maduro gave the order to put me in prison. He had identified me as the person who could replace him as president.
As the head of the oil, ruining the oil industry to line his pockets on his way out.
Han sido los corruptos de la época, bandidos, casi todos están prófugos de la justicia. Como la rata inmunda de Rafael Ramírez, protegido por el imperio norteamericano, viviendo en un castillo, una mansión en Italia. Rata inmunda, rata traidora, más temprano que tarde, la justicia venezolana te pondrá los cachos, ladrón de 4 suelas.
Entonces nos hace de lado, pero no solamente.
I'm not the only one he pushed aside. He did it to all of Chavez's associates. He put his friends from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs at the head of the country's institutions. It's terrible. He destroyed our country. He destroyed the dream we built together.
Sueño que todos teníamos.
On the 6th of December 2015, Venezuelans went to the polls to elect their members of parliament. For Nicolas Maduro, the vote didn't turn out as expected.
Ese día, con irreverencia, con revire democrático.
The president had lost his majority in parliament, something that hadn't happened since the revolution.
Asamblea Nacional, prepárate, prepara las maletas, que te va a llegar tu hora.
But Maduro didn't step down. Public rage exploded into rioting.
Students took to the streets and a wave of repression descended on protesters.
Hubo
131 young.
What the fuck? Why does my shit keep saying stream unavailable? Tupac. Is this documentary copyright? What is this copyright? What do you mean by policy violation? Let me see. So let me just get off of here right quick. That helps. Policy violation. Is the documentary copyright? Anyways, we started over. Stream suspended for policy violations. Everything about it, I'm stopping it periodically and giving my commentary, but they're suspending the stream on YouTube for policy. Bro, this is so gay. I swear, this is why I fucking. Oh my gosh, bro. I already had this stuff set up already. Let me check Rumble stuff. Trying to wait. Is gonna come back on? I'm mad because I had this stream already set up and I already had all these videos and the articles picked out, but now, bruh, now YouTube ain't gonna be able to see the stream. Bruh, I swear YouTube's policies are fucking gay. Trying to give a recap right quick about Venezuela's policies, but how am did I get hit with a copyright? We back now. Okay, so we're back on right now. Let me see. I'm trying to read this third party. Pretty much you guys already get the yeah, this is from W documentary, by the way. So I'll link it below in the comment section. I'll link it in the comment section so that way we don't get hit with another copyright. Because this is getting kind of annoying because my stream keeps getting cut off. It keeps getting cut off on YouTube. This is why I'll be glad when the Patreon gets up a little bit so we can react to some of these documentaries without having to worry about them being cut off. I'll switch it to something else right quick. Maybe
picture a situation that's
okay. So we're gonna use this one instead. You go to my good old friend War Fronts. War Fronts should be better. Shout him out. Go give him a follow. It's a good channel right here. He gives some good breakdowns of wars, a lot of wars, dictators, civil wars that are going on across the world. Good channel. I recommend you guys go give him a follow.
Picture a situation that's so disastrous it caused a country's population to plummet by almost 8 million people in 10 years. While such a statistic seems nearly unimaginable, it is sadly very real, and it relates to the almost apocalyptic state of decline that the country of Venezuela entered into in the period beginning in 2013. At the helm of it all, perched atop a crumbling country and a system which continues to fail its citizens, sits Nicolas Maduro, the one-time bus driver turned most powerful man in a country which was once one of the wealthiest in Latin America and is now one of its poorest. Venezuela has been in the news for its economic woes for a large part of the last decade, and just as it appeared to have faded from view, it was hauled back into the world's attention in December 2023 when that same leader made some wild claims threatening a neighboring country with invasion, a topic we discussed in some length at the time. So today, we thought we'd explore just how this all fits together. Who is Nicolas Maduro? What is the recent history of Venezuela? And just how did things get so bad over there? Okay, before we get there, a little bit of context on Venezuela's current president. Nicolas Maduro Moros was born into a working-class family with leftist political leanings in the Venezuelan capital Caracas in 1962. Similar to other prominent leaders that we've already covered, Maduro's early life is shrouded in a little mystery and debate, with some speculation that he was actually born in neighboring Colombia, his mother's home country, 1 year earlier. That's a significant claim since, according to the Venezuelan constitution, the president must be a Venezuelan citizen from birth, and this could therefore have made Maduro ineligible to assume the presidency if true. A young Maduro was said to be academically mediocre, but politically expedient, becoming a class leader in Liceo Jose Avalos, the high school he attended in his hometown.
It's important to understand this to get this information about Maduro out there, so you guys can get like a better understanding about himself before we get into covering the news and stuff like that, and get into what's currently going on in this conflict right now. You know, it's a shame we couldn't finish that documentary. I don't even think we could probably watch the other one. I mean, I might. Anyways. Yeah, so like I keep getting hit with policy violations. That's why the stream keeps going out. So that's exactly what was going on. I don't know if we can probably. I'll have to see. But in order to get a better understanding of why they're going after Maduro themselves, because like they say this is a war on cartels, but it's more like a war on Nicolas Maduro himself. That's what it seems like to me. It's not a war on just the drug cartels, it's like what the GOP has been saying. Like they have a war on narco terrorists. No, they have a war on Nicolas Maduro. They have a proclivity to push towards a regime change. That's what they're pushing towards. They don't give a damn about wanting to get Nicolas Maduro. I mean, they don't give a damn about getting the cartels or whatever under control, because like this has been going on for years, just now. And like I pretty much, yes, I'm agreeing with that. Cartels do destroy America. It destroys a way of life from any country, quite frankly. But to sit here and say that this is about the cartels when it's more about regime change in Venezuela. Yeah, this is just like especially to put in the puppet government, because once you already know why they want to do that. It's because they want the oil. They want to be able to control the oil and also have a government there in place that better suits America. So that's basically it. So. And then, but the thing about this is, and I'll make this very clear. Then we're gonna jump right back into the video. Is always putting in a puppet government doesn't always work for the most part. It's not a good thing. So there's a chance putting in a puppet government, it's a bad thing more than it's a good thing, because like you could destabilize the country, the region, right afterwards. I mean, history says that with Syria, Libya, Iraq. We've destabilized a bunch of countries that we've committed to regime change in, and afterwards, after the deed is done, the country's never the same. So.
District of El Valle. He's going to graduate high school and became bus driver, continuing his political activism and became at some point trade union leader for public transport employees in the capital region. Maduro was drawn to Hugo Chavez, future president of Venezuela, as the latter made his first foray into political action, and he became a member of the Bolivarian Revolution Movement, or MBR 200, in the early 1990s. Maduro supported Chavez when he attempted a coup d'etat against the state in 1992 and became a key member of Chavez's apparatus, or when he did eventually become president in 1999. During Chavez's 14 years as president, Maduro occupied several key government positions. He became president of the National Assembly of Venezuela in 2005 and Minister of Foreign Affairs in 2006. All this despite having no academic qualifications other than a one-year course in political education received at an institution for aspiring communists in Cuba in the mid-1980s. Nevertheless, Maduro was seen as having assumed his charge at the very helm of Venezuelan diplomacy competently. During his 6 years at the helm of the ministry, he fostered a network of diplomatic relations intended to strengthen Venezuela's ties with countries on poor terms with the United States, as well as regional powers in Central and South America, especially those with leftist governments such as Cuba, Bolivia, and Brazil. During this time, he also displayed devoted loyalty to Chavez, something which would pay dividends as he would assume the role of vice president in 2012 before ultimately succeeding Chavez as the president of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela on the 5th of March 2013. But while Maduro's rise to power was punctuated by a series of quite rapid successes, his presidency would be met immediately by a stark dose of reality. An economy in freefall, massive instability, hyperinflation, mass emigration, and massive protests indicative of a society brought to its very knees. So, if we have Maduro's presidency and the context under which it has unfolded, it is important to dive here into what has made Venezuela's economic situation so torrid, and why the years of Maduro's reign have been so disastrous in Venezuela. What's important to recall is that the decisions which led to Venezuela's well-documented economic collapse in the mid-2010s are not necessarily Maduro's or even Chavez's doing, at least not entirely. Rather, they're the result of a stream of decisions made by Venezuelan leaders over practically the length of the 20th century. At the heart of it all lies oil, the country's most valuable resource, its largest export, and in some ways, the source of all of its misery. Venezuela discovered vast oil reserves in the early 1900s. These oil reserves were, and remain, by some margin, the very largest in the world. According to OPEC data, Venezuela has proven reserves of around 303 billion barrels of oil, putting it far ahead of next-placed Saudi Arabia at 260 billion proven barrels. Successive Venezuelan governments capitalized on this oil wealth, resulting in Venezuela soon becoming widely classified as both a rentier state and petrostate. And Venezuela's oil money certainly did lend itself to some good times. In the 1950s, with much of the world ravaged by the Second World War, Venezuela was the fourth richest country in the world by GDP per capita, eclipsed only by the United States, Switzerland, and New Zealand. But the good times could not last. You see, while oil made Venezuela one of the richest countries in the world, it also brought a string of problems, including two potentially lethal ones for the country's stability. The first was rampant and routine corruption by state leaders of practically every political orientation, along with massive embezzlement of oil profits throughout much of this period of affluence. The second was an economic phenomenon which befell Venezuela, known shorthand as Dutch disease. Dutch disease is a circumstance where a country becomes so dependent on a given resource that it causes all other industries to become neglected, thereby increasing the country's dependence on that one resource even further. The term was coined by The Economist to describe the decline in Dutch manufacturing following the discovery and rapid exploitation of gas in the country. Ironically, the term first appeared in a 1977 article with the Dutch case in mind, but the phenomenon it revealed was actually already occurring in Venezuela at that same time, and it may realistically have equally been called the Venezuelan virus when it was first described. In short, Venezuela's economy became so dependent on oil that it became closely tied to the market price of the resource, and therefore heavily influenced by world events which would cause that price to rise and to fall. That is precisely what happened in the 1970s and 1980s. First, in the 1970s, Venezuela experienced a significant economic boost. The 1973 Yom Kippur War and the 1979 Iranian Revolution heavily reduced oil supplies coming out of the Middle East. While this led to massive energy shortages in many parts of the world, it was great news for Venezuela, which profited handsomely from the resulting rise in the market price of oil. However, the period also saw corruption and oil money embezzlement reach its zenith. The Venezuelan NGO Pro Calidad de Vida estimated in 1997 that around $100 billion in oil funds were wasted or stolen by Venezuelan officials during this period. Moreover, the 1980s would be nearly as kind to Venezuela. The start of the decade saw oil prices come crashing down, and Venezuela's economy came crashing with it, to the extent that Venezuela was forced to seek foreign loans to keep afloat. With quality of life in Venezuela tanking as a result of the crash, public dissatisfaction with the existing government grew and reached a boiling point in 1989. The so-called Caracazo was an explosion of unrest on the streets of Caracas and other Venezuelan cities after the government of center-left President Carlos Andrés Pérez announced a slew of austerity measures intended to secure a bailout loan from the IMF. When the protests were met with a brutal government crackdown, resulting in the deaths of possibly up to several thousand people, the credibility of the government disappeared entirely, and people began to yearn for change. It was in this climate of strife that Hugo Chavez Frias, a soldier in the Venezuelan army with leftist leanings, sensed a bit of an opportunity. Chavez attempted a coup d'etat in 1990, which was unsuccessful and for which he ended up in prison. However, his image of a sort of Venezuelan Robin Hood vying for the good of the people was born, and following his release, he was ultimately elected president of Venezuela in 1999. Chavez's presidency of Venezuela is looked at differently by different people, depending on political orientation. The 14 years...
We went over the Chavez part already, pretty much, yeah. Him becoming president, and then, you know, up until his death, then Maduro took over by... due in part to like a tragedy / miracle for Maduro, because no one really would have backed Maduro if he naturally just ran for president without having to just take power due to a tragedy. You know, because people, as most of the Venezuelan public probably looked at Maduro, wasn't looked at as being a leader, wasn't looked at as being president. So, like I've said before, and I'll say it again, I mean, like he became president by sheer luck. So
of so-called Chavismo may be described as revolutionary, transformative, authoritarian, charitable, oppressive, and a whole lot more. There is no doubt that Chavez's social programs helped lift a lot of Venezuelans out of poverty, and his government provided benefits to Venezuelans that had not been provided to them until then by a state which didn't really depend on the citizens' tax money. However, Chavez also ensured strict control over the freedom of the press and progressively eliminated political plurality in Venezuela. He also weakened the judiciary and withdrew from the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, an international criminal court with jurisdiction over practically all of Latin America. Chavez also squashed private enterprise and nationalized private businesses, including those providing services of great importance to the citizens, something that put Venezuela into having even more dependence on its imports. Venezuela's public debt also rose by almost 300% during his presidency. Perhaps above all, though, Chavez did nothing to change the dependence of Venezuela on its central resource of oil. When employees of the state-run oil company PDVSA went on strike in 2002, Chavez responded by firing over 19,000 oil industry workers, something which caused Venezuela's oil-producing ability to contract. Moreover, Chavez also didn't set any money aside in a sovereign wealth fund to insulate Venezuela against falls in oil price, which could be so critical for its monolithic economy, as he would well have known given the events of the Caracazo, which kick-started his ascent to power. In short, all these elements made the next looming economic crisis in Venezuela many times more disastrous than it otherwise would have been. By the time that crisis hit, Chavez had done something which meant he would not foot any of the blame for what was coming. He died. After his death from cancer in early 2013, the reins of the state wound up in the palms of Maduro, who'd been serving as his vice president since the previous year. And it would be only over the course of the following year that the full force of Venezuela's problems would erupt and Venezuela would buckle under the pressure. Tragically, the economic crisis, which had struck Venezuela in the late 1980s and had resulted in the Caracazo.
Also, key point, he did kick out bankers, like the established bankers that were already in Venezuela. He kicked them out and was trying to rely on a new banking system that was exclusively made in like Venezuela. It's something similar to what the National Socialists did in Germany during their period and rise. They arrested all the Rothschild bankers, and then they created their own banking system. So that's also in due part why there's so much inflation and why there's so much economic downfalls, because like Maduro is trying to have an alternative solution than the already established banking system that was already put in place. So that's in due part to why they're having so much economic crisis right now. And that's pretty much hurting a lot of the Venezuelan people. This is the reason why like they hate Maduro so badly, is because of like his refusal to actually stay the course with the already established and quite frankly successful banking system. Instead, he'd rather just create his own. You know, he's willing to play a different game. He's ready to play life on hard mode, basically. So I don't knock the guy for that, but it's just like it's causing his own people to die of starvation, suffrage, and it's causing a lot of unrest right now in Venezuela.
Caracazo protests was actually small time in comparison with the crisis which struck Venezuela just after Chavez died. The 2013 Venezuelan crisis was, on a national level, more disastrous even than the fall of the Soviet Union and the Great Depression. Oil prices fell, and Venezuela's exposed economy, by now dependent on oil for 90% of its revenue, just crumbled. As defaults rose, foreign lenders stopped issuing loans to Venezuelans. Due to its massive borrowing, Venezuela was not in a position to continue importing everyday goods as it had been doing before. The cost of essential commodities skyrocketed, hyperinflation took hold, and the value of the Venezuelan bolivar, the national currency, plummeted overnight. Millions of Venezuelans fled abroad, and by 2020, the Marshall Center reported millions of Venezuelans were seeking temporary refuge in neighboring South American countries, with around 1.8 million Venezuelans sheltering in Colombia alone. Throughout this, Maduro stood impotent and simply continued the tried and tested autocrat's tactic of clinging to power as the country weltered around him. Massive protests have broken out immediately in the wake of Chavez's death, and these only grew as hyperinflation struck Venezuela and the price of everyday commodities reached astounding levels. However, Maduro continued to enjoy the support of the military, something which would prove crucial in the context of the spiraling economic situation. The protests were resultingly brutally put down under the new leader's orders. Understandably, the Venezuelan public had not taken to their new leader, and within 1 year of taking office, as the country crumbled under the dire economic conditions, Maduro's approval rating stood at a paltry 25%. It is partly this very visible lack of popularity which made Maduro's re-election as president in 2018 appear highly dubious. Officially, Maduro won re-election with around 67% of the vote. The Venezuelan opposition, however, disputed the result of the election and declared the results illegitimate, further claiming that this made President of the National Assembly, Juan Guaido, the interim president. This was supported by the United States, which refused to recognize the official victory of the elections by Maduro and instead recognized Guaido as president.
This guy's had 2 dubious re-elections, man. It's crazy to me. He's had 2 dubious re-elections. Like, his opponents obviously beat him in elections, and he just said, you know what, I'm president. I'm just going to stay in power. Screw that. I'm not getting out of power. You can't tell me what I can't do. I run this shit. You know, it's almost like equivalent to, like, say, if Trump decided to, like, say, you know what, I'm just going to stay in power till the day I die. I don't want to stop being president. I can be president forever. You know, Steve Bannon, I mean, he's been pushing his rhetoric a lot on a lot of interviews. He's been saying that Trump can run for a 3rd term. Like, He's basically saying, like, he's telling them to basically do the Maduro route. Just say, you know what, fuck it. Get rid of elections. You know, do what China did. Do what Xi Jinping did. Just get rid of elections and just stay forever the leader. Stay forever the president. Be a forever president. Be a monarch. You know, it's in some ways I don't disagree with that. Actually, in some ways I don't disagree with that. But at the same time, it'd be like, it defeats the purpose of what America is, because at that point, it wouldn't be America anymore. So, you know, that's more of a leftist talking point, you know, but I would never be opposed to Trump being a dictator. So I'm not opposed to it. But I mean, but then we're entering a different type of world at that point. Then it would be America.
A position shared at some point by around 60 other countries, including most of the EU. This immediately left the Venezuelan dictator in a sort of limbo. Crippling sanctions were introduced against the government, which only added to the failing economy, mass immigration, and large-scale protests. With the inflation rate still spiraling, sanctions against the country, a united opposition, and diaspora, it may have appeared like the socialist government of Venezuela in the absence of Hugo Chavez might be on its last legs. Now you might ask, why was Chavez's popularity in Venezuela so high while Maduro's had, since the outset, always been so low? Well, the answer to that is pretty complicated, and it likely spans a number of explanations. However, suffice to narrow it down to the fact that Chavez had three things on his profile that Maduro does not really have. The first was charisma. Chavez was well-liked. He was a swashbuckling fellow. He could be recalled singing mariachi ballads at public events. In contrast, Maduro is stiff, solid, and awkward. Chavez had also been a paratrooper in the Venezuelan military, and his Rambo-style coup d'etat had earned him a reputation as a folk hero, while Maduro had started life as a bus driver and had not entered power with anything close to the same political acumen that Chavez had. Secondly, Chavez, through his public programs, had a number of PR victories on his profile that Maduro did not. His spending...
Look, basically, if I have to put this in, like, normie terms, Chavez had motion. Maduro has no motion. Like, this guy has no motion at all. Chavez was that dude. Maduro doesn't have any motion. So, if I have to put that in normie terms, so in case some of you normies don't get that, but yeah. Chavez's credentials were far better, and he related and was well liked because he was just such a likable guy to the general public in Venezuela, whereas Maduro just came off as just being like a guy that just didn't give off like leadership qualities.
On social programs targeting the elimination of poverty and mass education projects, painted his regime as a friend of the people and a force for good, while quietly masking the targeting of foreign companies, which helped sustain Venezuela's GDP, as well as a complete inability to diversify the one-dimensional Venezuelan economy. It didn't help that Chavez had spent big on social problems designed to improve the living situation of everyday Venezuelans, which they did, but these programs were only sustainable insofar as the price and demand for Venezuela's oil remained relatively stable. And that brings us to the third element that Chavez profited from and Maduro didn't, and that was simple luck. Just as before, the economy of Venezuela under Chavez remains entirely tied to oil. Yet practically, the entirety of Chavez's reign was punctuated by a high demand for oil, especially in the early 2000s when China began buying up Venezuelan oil hand over fist. As Charles Shapiro, former U.S. ambassador to Venezuela, told the Wharton School of Business, quoting, "In many ways, Hugo Chavez was the luckiest guy in the world. When Chavez became president, Venezuelan oil sold for $8 a barrel. It reached $140 at one point and was around $115 or so when he died, and Maduro began his tenure." One analyst took it a step further, remarking to Al Jazeera, quoting again, "The biggest sucker in Venezuelan history is the guy who is going to follow Chavez as president." In essence, almost none of the economic success that Venezuela experienced under Chavez can be attributable to any economic mastery. In contrast, much of the misery experienced by Venezuela after his death could be directly attributed to a severe lack of foresight by Chavez and his government while he was in power. You see, rather than see the past economic failures of Venezuela as the result of corruption and lack of diversification of Venezuelan industries that it had been, Chavez instead decided...
That is one argument you can make, that, yeah, even when Chavez basically had Venezuela at its best, it was still going to head to an economic crash at some point.
Point the finger of blame at the capitalist and neoliberal entities he claimed were taking advantage of Venezuelan resources for their own benefit. Correspondingly, he made sure to impose disfavorable conditions upon those who would seek to exploit Venezuela's oil and resolutely refused to replace it with a domestic apparatus for refining the oil, something that in Venezuela's case was badly needed. Chavez focused his energy instead on solidifying his rule over Venezuela through an iron grip, earning himself the nickname Hugo Boss from the General Foreign Policy in 2006, while continuing social programs intended to secure relatively good graces from the Venezuelan people. Now, while Maduro was not responsible for the mess that was left to him by Chavez and his predecessors, he was responsible for how his administration would react to that mess. And that, as it turned out, was to commit the exact same pattern of authoritarian behavior pursued by his mentor, suppressing political freedom and sabotaging Venezuela's economic prospects by chasing away foreign corporations. All this interspaced with a healthy dose of anti-American, anti-neoliberal rhetoric. But Maduro did make one move, which was entirely his own, which even Chavez had not put forward as a realistic plan of action by Venezuela, and which catapulted Venezuela into the world's attention in late 2023, and that was to threaten to invade and annex the territory of a sovereign nearby nation. We're talking, of course, about Venezuela's claims to the Essequibo region of Guyana, along with its resources. Now, the Essequibo topic is something something that we've actually already covered here on War Graphics, and so we're not going to devote too much time to the subject today. Watch that if you want to. But there is one additional thing to understand about Venezuela's oil in the context of the Essequibo, and that's not just its abundance, but also its quality. In very broad terms, oil can be measured in terms of both its lightness, with lighter oil requiring much less difficulty in extraction than heavy oil, and the presence of certain chemical impurities, such as sulfur. A common measure for the weight of crude oil is the American Petroleum Institute Gravity Index, or API. Oil with a high API will move easily from the reservoir to the producing well. Meanwhile, low sulfur means that the oil will be less corrosive on the producing well, and thus reduce the cost of refining it. According to McKinsey, Venezuelan crude oil has an API between 16 and 30, whereas the Saudi range is between 28 and 51. This means that Venezuela's oil requires a much more intensive operation to refine it, a procedure requiring specialist knowledge and on-site access to the oil sites, which Venezuela, under Chavez and Maduro, became rather unwilling to provide. And as you might have suspected by now, the oil found in Guyana in 2015 is considered to be of very high quality, being both of a high API and quite low in sulfur. This, in addition to the other resources offered by the Essequibo region, as pointed out in our other video on the topic, is many times more alluring to Venezuela's iridescent posturing than it would have normally been. So, what's next for Venezuela under Maduro? Well, unfortunately for Venezuelans, it doesn't look like Maduro is going to be going anywhere anytime soon. In the years since the turbulent beginning of his presidency.
Well, like I said, now currently that brings us to today. So, as you can see, we're going to go ahead and get into the article. So, a lot's happened. I've already explained earlier, 8 boats have been bombed coming out of Venezuela. GOP has been steadfast in saying that these are narco-terrorists coming out of Venezuela. The Venezuelan government and even some independent media in the States and abroad have said that there's no evidence to prove that they were narco-terrorists at all. It's just basically hearsay, because the GOP has not provided evidence to show anyone if they are narco-terrorists. So this is from antiwar.com. So President Trump authorizes the CIA to conduct lethal covert action in Venezuela. This was posted a couple of days ago on October 15th, 2025. The Trump administration has authorized the CIA to take covert action inside Venezuela, including lethal operations. The New York Times reported on Wednesday as the administration's push toward regime change heats up. So So you already know what this means. Once the CIA are like the attack dogs. You know, they're like the attack dogs of the United States government, even though technically the CIA goes off the rails and just do whatever they want to do at any moment. They're basically uncontrollable at most times. Like, we need to reel in the CIA. But right now, the Trump administration is using the CIA to basically commit to a quote-unquote covert action in Venezuela. In reality, what they're there for is, if you already know the history of CIA, they're there to commit to a regime change. They're there to start the process of a conflict, depending on how small and how big it's going to be. But ultimately, the main goal of the conflict is to get a regime change and get Maduro out of power, and possibly arrest and then extradite him back to the States and prosecute him. So President Trump later confirmed that he authorized the covert action and said the U.S. was considering attacks on Venezuela territory. We are certainly looking at land now because we got the sea very well under control, he said. So we're going to go over to this article right here. This is Nicolas Maduro. He rejects regime change and criticizes the CIA coups in Latin America. So we're going to go over to where... All right, so we're going to go over to here, right around this little spot right here, where it says, peace must prevail, affirmed Maduro, who also resorted to his deliberately clumsy English to proclaim not war, peace. Maduro is steadfast on trying to uphold peace. He does not want conflict with the United States government, because this is a lose-lose situation. There are going to be lives lost on the American side, don't get me wrong, because this is not going to be a pretty conflict, because if we're going to have boots on the ground, you can best believe that this is going to get ugly. Of course, we're still going to ultimately win, but Venezuela is definitely taking this serious, because they've had, like, for like the last couple of weeks or so, they've had like military training, not just for their soldiers, but for the regular average people too as well. The civilians have also been given military training in anticipation for like an impending conflict. So now as it goes on, no regime change no to regime change, which reminds us so much of the failed wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Libya. Yeah, I brought that up earlier. All those regime changes led to the goddamn, I'm having a tongue twist. Excuse me. Destabilization of all three of these countries. No to coups d'etat carried out by the CIA, like those in Chile and Argentina. Until when will CIA coups d'etat continue? Latin America doesn't want them, doesn't need them, and repudiates them. Continue Hugo Chavez's successor. These statements came a few hours after Trump confirmed that he had authorized the CIA to carry out covert operations inside Venezuela. So Maduro's already well aware that the CIA is there, and they're there to basically do quote unquote covert action, whatever that means. But it's the CIA. You already know what that means. Especially when Trump's already given them permission to go out there and do what they do best, and that is commit to regime changes that destabilizes countries. Yeah, so we already see how this is going to play out right now. So I'm gonna go over here. So this is recently a day after. So head of U.S. Southern Command to step down amid strikes on boats and push toward Venezuela regime change. So this is U.S. He is Southcom Commander Admiral Alvin Hosley. Hosley. So according to a statement from Southcom, Commander Admiral Alvin Hosley, who served in the position for less than a year, he would be retiring on December 12, 2025, ending a 37-year military career. No reason was given for his resignation, but according to the New York Times, he had raised concerns about U.S. military mission in the Caribbean, which has involved a significant buildup of forces and bombing of 5 boats that the Trump administration has claimed without providing evidence and were carrying drugs. So Hosley right here is resigning for a odd reason, but it's kind of very clear that he does not agree with what's going on right now in this conflict. He does not agree with going to war with Venezuela, especially considering that Trump ran on no new wars. But now he is he in the last couple of months he's changed the Department of Defense to the Department of War, its original name before, and now he's been having this increasingly intensive rhetoric for the last couple of weeks pertaining to Venezuela. So it's very clear that he is very much committed to a war. He's very much not continuing his same talking points before, especially during his run up to his election in 2024. He's very much in the field house of, we need to go ahead and get ourselves involved in a regime change in Venezuela and get this non-realistic president out of his power. Get this so I had the word on top of my head. Damn, I had the word on top of my head. But he wants to get this this actor who's not already a president of anything, who's lost twice in my opinion, out of his position and put in a puppet government that is going to better suit the United States government. And the crazy thing about it is, you look at Maduro, who's actually looking for diplomacy. Trump is damn sure not trying to hear that no more. He's committed to just going ahead and say, look, we just need to go ahead and out Maduro and just put somebody else in that position. So, oops, it's just as this, well, that's that on those right there. So, hopefully, and of course, like I said, the rhetoric is getting more and more intense right now. So we're gonna get an update right now what's really going on right now. So this is from DW News. This is currently what's going on right now with the U.S. government and Venezuela.
This is what Trump's war on drugs looks like.
I see boats coming in, like loaded up the other day with all sorts of drugs, and we're going to take them out.
The U.S. military destroyed these boats in international waters off of Venezuela's shores. Trump is justifying the controversial attacks as targeting narco-terrorists. It's the biggest U.S. military deployment in the region of the 21st century, and it could also be targeting Venezuela's leader Nicolas Maduro's grip on power. So is this really a war on drugs from Venezuela, or is the U.S. up to something bigger in the Caribbean? The Roosevelt Roads naval base in Puerto Rico was shut down in 2004. For the last 2 decades, it was abandoned and slowly being reclaimed by nature. But now, the U.S. military is back, and with their most advanced fighters, Reaper drones, and Osprey tilt-rotor aircraft. Puerto Rico is a largely self-governed territory of the U.S. The U.S. military buildup is not only on the island, it's taking place across the Caribbean, with warships, aircraft, and even a nuclear-powered submarine. And their sights are set on Venezuela.
It's a significant deployment. We haven't seen anything like this in a generation.
Christopher Hernandez-Roy is an expert on the Americas and on geopolitics at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, a U.S. think tank.
For a counter-narcotics operation, it is much larger than anything that's ever been seen.
For Trump, it's not just a war on drugs, but on terrorism. His administration has designated several cartels and criminal gangs.
Like I said, this is supposed to not even be taking place right now. We're not even supposed to be in any war right now. Again, the rhetoric has literally shifted from us being no new wars to, look, you know what? We need to just go ahead and just like commit to a war. I'm all for cleaning up cartels or whatever, but look, let's go ahead and before we get back into this right quick, let's go ahead and segue into, I got the numbers right here, and these are some facts right here that I wrote down on my notepad. So Venezuela is not identified as a cocaine producing country. This is from the World Drug Report 2025. So these are all the numbers right here. Okay, so as I continue on, Venezuela is not identified as a cocaine producing country in the report. Global coca cultivation and cocaine production are concentrated in Colombia. 2,500 tons produced in 2023. Peru and Bolivia, totaling a record 3,708 tons worldwide, up to 34% from 2022. No coca cultivation or processing labs are mapped or quantified in Venezuela, unlike neighboring Colombia. So this is what the administration, the GOP, has been leaning on, that most of the fentanyl, the cocaine, all the drugs are coming from Venezuela. That's not true at all. Cocaine doesn't have the factories, nor are they making the cocaine there. They're not a cocaine hub. It's more coming from Colombia than anything. So their beef with Venezuela is clear that they're blaming all the fentanyl, all the drugs that are coming over from that side. It is true that, yes, I do have it on here that there are some drugs that are trafficked through Venezuela, but it's not to the highest degree. It's very silly for Trump to get this information wrong, but it's very clear that they're using this as an excuse to go ahead to pick the fight with Venezuela right now. So again, like I said, I'm being very objective right now. You know, my political ideology, I'm right leaning, of course, but again, I got to be objective. I don't want to just come up here and just give you, wrong information and just give you false stuff that's just not true. So Venezuela plays a marginal role as a transit point for cocaine originating primarily from Colombia. The report notes only a small fraction of Colombian cocaine passes through Venezuela en route to the Caribbean, U.S., and Europe, estimated at 5% of Colombian drug flows based on seizure data 2020 to 2023. Again, this is from the recent World Drug Report in 2025. So just to give you a little segue, to give you like a little bit of understanding exactly that, no, cocaine is not made in, it's not made in Venezuela, nor is the fentanyl. None of that's coming out of Venezuela. None of that stuff's made in Venezuela. Most of that's coming from Colombia, Bolivia, Peru. Those countries are the ones that are the major hubs for all these drug manufacturing and drug shipments. Yes, there's the small percentage that passes through Venezuela, but it's not a large percent, really. So this information that the GOP is pushing out, it's very well wrong right now. So it's clear as day that they're using this as an excuse to go after Venezuela, but it's clear that majority of Americans don't even even understand what's really going on, nor do they understand exactly, nor do they even know that Venezuela is not the drug hub of South America. That would be mostly Colombia. So,
among them Tren de Aragua as terrorist organizations.
That's a big one. The president's thesis is that Venezuela is run by a drug cartel, and Nicolas Maduro sits at the top of that cartel.
This is what Trump posted. Tren de Aragua is operating under the control of Nicolas Maduro. The series of U.S. strikes on drug boats allegedly run by smugglers from Venezuela has killed dozens. United Nations rights experts have slammed the military strikes as lawless and as extrajudicial executions. The strikes stand in stark contrast to previous U.S. counter-drug operations. The U.S. Coast Guard used to intercept such boats and arrest and interrogate suspected smugglers. Now the suspects are simply being blown up.
Yeah, that's kind of wild on their part, because they're just bombing the boats, like literally not even giving them a chance to even like explain themselves. They're just going ahead and just blowing them up, and they've blown up like 8 boats right now, currently speaking. Like 8 boats in total have been blown. So it's crazy to me that they're still coming out there, but I mean, for the most part, what's being alleged by the Venezuelan government and also the people of Venezuela, along with, like I said earlier, some media that's either domestic or abroad, what's being alleged is that majority of these boats that are being blown up, they're regular Venezuelan people. They're either immigrants that are trying to come to the United States to migrate, or they're fishermen. That's what's being said right now. That's the rhetoric right now. That is the counter rhetoric to what the GOP is saying us. And the GOP, again, is not presenting any evidence to their argument, to their stance, is that these are narco terrorists. They're just calling them narco terrorists, and we just blew up a narco terrorist boat filled with drugs, cocaine, and fentanyl on the boat. So I haven't seen no evidence of that at all, and they still haven't presented none, even to this point right now.
Venezuela is deeply involved in the drug trade. It's a very important transit nation.
Jeremy McDermott is co-director of Insight Crime, an organization dedicated to studying organized crime.
Venezuela obviously has an enormous coastline, which is the Caribbean and the Atlantic. The stuff going through the Caribbean, some is bound for the United States, but a significant amount is bound for Europe. But the Pacific is more important than the Caribbean or Atlantic seaboards for drug smuggling into the United States. If we look at this from a drug trafficking perspective, it would indeed make more sense to station this flotilla in the Pacific.
But instead, Trump has zeroed in on Venezuela under Maduro, and it's not the first time. In Trump's first term, Maduro was already charged with narco-terrorism in the US, and a bounty was put on his head. Now that bounty has increased to $50 million. That's twice the amount the US...
Yeah, the first one was just like a I got an analogy for this. It's like a free trial to Netflix, and now this is like them collecting their money. Basically, this is like the United States government that wants to collect its money now. That's the equivalent. That's the analogy I'm taking away from this.
Offered for Osama bin Laden.
And it's even crazy to me that this is way more than what they're paying for. This is what they charge, like, for the arrest of Osama bin Laden. It's even insane to me. They really want Maduro's head.
Nicolas Maduro has done is he has created a form of hybrid criminal governance. He's not running directly a drug trafficking organization. His regime has made alliances with criminal actors, including drug traffickers, and he is facilitating.
That also would include Tren de Aragua. Tren de Aragua is not directly taking orders from the Maduro regime. No. They have a deal in place with the Maduro regime to where, look, we make the money, we just look the other way, and we give you your cut or whatever. We give some of, like, high-ranking officials, I don't have their names off the back of my head, but that's actually what's being reported in Venezuela, that yes, in Tren de Aragua, even though they're not technically as bad of a problem, I believe, I remember I was watching a video earlier that Tren de Aragua here is not as bad over there, because the Maduro regime basically just allows them to do whatever they want, but as long as they cut them a cut of their money. So,
and protecting these businesses in exchange for the criminal rents he needs to maintain the loyalty to his regime.
So Trump does have a rationale if this is about fighting drugs. the US has a major drug problem. Hundreds of thousands have died in recent years from opioids, heroin, and fentanyl. Donald Trump promised to stop the flow of drugs. But the size of the Caribbean operation could also indicate something else.
Some think that part of the pressure is, at a minimum, to get the regime to change certain behaviors and provide concessions, and others think that it could be an effort to push Maduro out of power.
And that's what Maduro himself also seems to believe.
El objetivo es entrar y apoderarse de Venezuela y hacer un cambio de régimen en Venezuela.
Maduro has mobilized the population, warning he's ready to declare a state of emergency if the US attacks. Trump has authorized a CIA covert operation. So is the real US goal to take Maduro down? To understand what's at stake, we need to take a closer look at this country, which, by the way, has the largest oil reserves in the world. It shares a land border with 3 countries, and additionally has several island states close by.
I still think that Venezuela is very important geopolitically for the region, not only for the Caribbean, but the entire Latin America and South American geography.
Oskar Schlenker is DW's correspondent for Venezuela. Born and raised in the country, he's currently in Germany.
When our country was in better shape, we were the door to South America.
In the 1970s, Venezuela was one of the richest countries in the region. The main reason? Those big oil reserves. For example, here, the Orinoco oil belt has huge potential, but it's far from being fully used. Today, after years of mismanagement, the Venezuelan oil industry is in disrepair. Corruption and organized crime is thriving, and the population is suffering from poverty, causing millions to leave the country. And growing tensions with the United States led to various sanctions starting in 2005, with Maduro's predecessor, Hugo Chavez.
He had a really anti-American, anti-U.S. Rhetoric. U.S. and Venezuelan relations have been really bad for a number of years now.
Chavez died in office in 2013. Maduro has since installed a ruthless authoritarian regime. When Trump was asked if he wanted a regime change, he downplayed the possibility.
Yeah, he's been dodging the question a lot. He's been dodging his question a lot. He does not want to directly answer if this conflict right now between the United States government and the Venezuela government, if it's more about war on the cartel, or if it's mainly more about regime change with Maduro. He would not give a straight answer to that at all. And practically, he doesn't want to say it out loud, but it's kind of very clear based on their actions alone.
Well, we're not talking about that, but we are talking about the fact that you had an election which was a very strange election.
The U.S. called the recent presidential elections in Venezuela illegitimate and does not recognize Maduro as the president. Opposition candidates have either fled the country or were forced into hiding. That includes opposition leader Maria Corina Machado, who got the Nobel Peace Prize.
That's who I was talking about earlier. Maria Corina Machado, I believe her name is. Let me see.
Hiding. That includes opposition leader Maria Corina Machado, who...
Yeah, Corina. Maria Corina Machado is her name. Yep. That's who I was referring to earlier. This was running against Maduro in his last election. She is very far right. I've seen in an interview. She's definitely pushing the rhetoric about a regime change in Venezuela. She wants it because she knows once Maduro's taken out of power, she will be put into power by the U.S. government. So, this woman's very, yes, she is very hardcore Zionist too as well. So, yeah, so that's not a good idea. Not a good idea.
Who got the Nobel Peace Prize for her persistent efforts to restore democracy and defend human rights in her country. Meanwhile, the U.S. is considering military strikes within Venezuela.
I think what the US is seeking to do here is to create fractures or ruptures within the Maduro regime. Everything depends on the military in Venezuela. The military essentially supports the Maduro regime, and of course, it's the main instrument of repression.
And that military has profited from organized crime. So the idea might be...
What the hell? This bruh. Bruh, but I'm not gonna lie, their military looks damn sure fitter than ours.
Weaken the system that keeps Maduro in power to eventually take him down in the process.
You know, I'm starting to think back now, that speech that Pete Hegseth gave I believe it was last month. I guess this is what he was referring to, that we need to prepare ourselves for war and get ready for war. Now it makes all sense. Now it makes total sense exactly what he was talking about.
I think they are trying to do everything possible or everything at their disposition to try and damage Maduro's administration.
But let's keep in mind, it wouldn't be the first time the US toppled a government led by someone wanted on US drugs charges. That's what happened in Panama in 1989 when the US invaded the country.
There is a historical fear that the U.S. will meddle in South America's affairs in a way that is not fair for South America. In all honesty, there's a lot of citizens that are just really tired of the current regime that's governing Venezuela, and they wouldn't mind having a regime change at whatever cost.
But hold on. Hasn't Trump promised to keep...
See, the thing about it is, the reason why I'm not 100% well, look, I'll give a prediction right now. It's kind of similar to what Iran. It's similar to Iran right now. Basically, like, whereas a lot of Iranians that lived in Iran hated the current regime that was presiding over the country. To the point they were probably want a different regime, but because of the attacks by Israel, and then also the bombing by the United States government, it's probably pushed the country more together. And I hate to say that, but this is kind of like what I see the opposite effect of. Like, it's the same kind of effect that I see happening right now in Venezuela. Compared to what this guy's saying, I see the opposite. I see more of like, this is going to push the Venezuelan government, well, not the Venezuela, this is going to push the Maduro regime and the Venezuelan people more together, in my opinion. And it's maybe because, like, basically I look at it as because the boat bombing is more or less trying to give the public a perception that this will continue to happen to fishermen, to supposed narco terrorists, unless you do something about your leader and you take him out of power and you overthrow him. This is what the GOP is trying to give the common Venezuelan folk, the idea we need to overthrow this government to stop this pain and suffering right now and turn them over to the United States government. So that's basically what they're trying to do with all these strikes, because like they're not even arresting them at this point. They're just blowing the ship up because they're just saying that they're narco terrorists, because they still haven't showed us any proof that it is narco terrorists on those boats. You know, everyone's been asking for a little bit more transparency, and the GOP refuses to give us that. So
keep the US out of new wars?
We will seek friendship and goodwill with the nations of the world. We do not seek to impose our way of life on anyone.
But that might not apply to the region we're talking about. Now it's time to look at the Caribbean as a whole. Remember that U.S. naval base in Puerto Rico? This is Pete Hegseth, the U.S. Defense Secretary, on a warship there.
This might be the single most beautiful picture I have ever seen in my entire life. Looking out at these faces, looking out at this Caribbean, on a floating island of American power.
The recent Caribbean deployment shows there's a shift to hard power.
The perception is the United States has become a bully, and you either do what you're told or you face sanctions of one type or another.
Recently, we called it shared neighborhood, but we might be returning to an older nomenclature of the U.S.'s backyard.
The U.S. operations in the Caribbean come after a few other moves by Trump in the Western Hemisphere. He threatened to take back the Panama Canal. We recently did a deep dive on this. And he, well, joked repeatedly about Canada becoming the 51st U.S. state. He also suggested using force to take Greenland.
At this point, Canada should be the 51st state.
And from NATO ally Denmark. We also looked into that already. All this reminds many of a 200-year-old U.S. policy. The Monroe Doctrine is named after the 5th President of the United States. Back then, James Monroe basically warned European powers not to interfere or recolonize the Americas. For many, it seemed to proclaim that this part of the world was clearly a U.S. sphere of influence. Now, Trump seems to be pursuing a Monroe 2.0.
Yes, he definitely is using the Monroe Doctrine. I totally forgot about that one. Actually, yes, he's definitely using the Monroe Doctrine.
I think what it essentially means is that the United States wants to be the hegemonic power in its region. And it is the hegemonic power, certainly in the military sphere. But in the economic sphere, it has lost a lot of ground to China. And so it's pursuing policies that
This is why the economic Cold War is going on right now with China. I do need to cover China, though. I need to cover about these terrorists, these 100% terrorists that will put on China. Where now Trump is raising that even more. And I really need to get caught up with some articles about that before I cover that. So we're going to cover China soon.
That feels will ensure that the region follows U.S. leadership.
And here is where that economic sphere really plays out. In Guyana, one of Venezuela's neighbors. The two countries have a decades-old border dispute, which involves oil-rich territories and a major offshore oil reserve.
This is what Warfront was talking about earlier in that video we watched earlier, that yeah, Guyana and Venezuela have a very heated history right now, especially when they invaded. Um, I might could cover that someday. I'll probably find a good documentary. Once I get the Patreon up, we could probably watch that documentary behind the paywall because I really don't want to get hit with a copyright right now because it's getting kind of annoying.
A reserve U.S. businesses have major interests in. To show support for Guyana, U.S. fighter jets made an appearance.
Ladies and gentlemen, the U.S. military fly over. Put your hands together.
So there's also an effect to have the military presence in the region as a deterrent against Venezuela taking any action against Guyana or against the oil platforms in the region.
So how does all this resonate in the rest of the region? Not too badly. Some countries are responding positively to Trump's harsh war on drugs.
This rhetoric really resounds in a lot of poor people in the hemisphere that are really suffering from the crime and how crime has developed in the region, which brings a lot of violence, a lot of deaths, and a lot of insecurity.
The Caribbean is one of the most violent regions in the world. So this isn't some abstract notion.
No dispute on that.
This is something that tops the political agenda and tops citizen concerns.
One country that has even signaled support for the U.S. naval presence is Trinidad and Tobago, right next door to Venezuela. Regional allies are still on Venezuela's side. But what about Venezuela's partners further afield, like China and Russia?
I would have imagined China and Russia to be a little bit more outspoken about these issues, but we haven't heard that much from Putin or from Xi Jinping about it.
Oh, they love it. Well, I mean...
Well, I've already said this earlier. The reason why they're not going to get involved and why they're going to say some stuff here and there, but they already have their own stuff going on right now. China still has, at some point, already has it in its head that they're going to invade Taiwan. And Russia is currently still in the conflict with Ukraine. So I don't really foresee them even jumping in and trying to save Venezuela right now. Venezuela is basically on its own right now. And Iran is still recovering from that little scrimmage they had with Israel. So I don't foresee any of them getting involved right now, per se. I mean, maybe Colombia, but I doubt that, bro. Venezuela's on its own island right now by itself. Let's just say that they're if the conflict starts tomorrow, Venezuela's screwed. And there's a key update that just happened too as well. Besides Maduro responding to Trump, there's also a warship also heading that way too.
If the
seems to be a lot more.
It's too big to be a counter-narcotics operation. It may be too small to be something that could be used for regime change.
So part of the U.S. case is motivated by an actual attempt to stop the flow of drugs into the U.S. But it's also a show of force, a means to secure U.S. interests, and the possible return of a foreign policy doctrine from another era.
I gotta fix that gay-ass internet, bro. Anyways, yeah, so that's that right now. So we're gonna move on right now to big updates right now. So we got B-2 bombers had flown over the skies of Venezuela a couple of days ago. And we also have warships already heading there too as well. So like I said, this is heating up more and more right now. This is very much getting very a real possibility of like warfare is about to be among us. Like if the American people aren't already aware now, I hope they're very much more aware than ever. So this is from Redacted. They have broke the news that war in Venezuela ready to begin. Bombers en route to topple Maduro. They posted this 1 day ago.
With Venezuela a few minutes ago, 2 long-range bombers just did some reconnaissance aerial missions, preparing for possible strikes and land strikes. President Trump on Wednesday suggested that U.S.
Give them a follow too. I like that.
Strikes could start on land instead of at sea. Of course, they've hit about 9 of those alleged drug boats, whatever they are. So that now we're going to move to the land. Of course, we're done with our little sea experiment, Gilligan. We've been treating these. We've been, of course, covering these so-called drug boats now for the past few days. Trump has made similar comments before, and according to multiple media reports, the U.S. is preparing to bomb Venezuela with the goal of.
Oops. Sorry about that.
Experiment, Gilligan. We've been treating these. We've been, of course, covering these.
Yeah. So like right now, yeah, a lot of this news is getting. Yeah, a lot of this news is getting very, very, very more realistic right now than ever.
so-called drug boats now for the past few days. Trump has made similar comments before, and according to multiple media reports, the U.S. is preparing to bomb Venezuela with the goal of pushing out, of course, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, and trying to use, I think, the drug trade as cover for the larger plan here. The author of Provoked is a man by the name of Scott Horton. How Washington started the new Cold War with Russia and the catastrophe in Ukraine. This man is a walking encyclopedia of how empires try to create regime change around the world. Scott, it's a real thrill to have on the show today. Scott, welcome to Redacted for the first time.
Thank you. It's great to be with you both.
Our pleasure.
Yeah, I think he's been on once before. This is the second time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Did really?
I think Not Running Enough already came out.
Oh, okay. Maybe you did a separate interview. That's right. Maybe a couple of years ago. All right. Anyway. Broadcast. I don't think we've had you on during our live show before. Nevertheless, let's dive into a number of these big stories today. Let's start with Venezuela. After the break, we'll talk about Ukraine and what's going on with Russia. That seems to be barreling out of control. But President Trump calling for perhaps land strikes and seems like getting ready for some kind of a land invasion. What do you make of these next steps from President Trump going after Nicolas Maduro and regime change there?
God, man, I don't know. Right? Unbelievable should translate somewhere near not believable. And yet, geez, in this case, I don't know what they're going to do. And they have no cause to they have no legitimate excuse for war whatsoever. And in fact, like, even just on the basic question of stealing their oil, there's only one refinery. Well, this may be outdated information, but the way I understand it, there's only one refinery in Corpus Christi owned by the remaining Koch brother that's capable of refining that heavy Venezuelan crude oil. And I can't imagine the Kochs are behind this, like pushing for this. Like they're not that bad. You know what I mean? They got their problem. Right. I can't imagine that's really the push, like their particular interest in, oh, we want to refine and turn that into Citgo gas. I mean, maybe there's a lot I don't know about what the oil lobby is doing in Washington right now, but as far as any threat by the Venezuelan regime against the United States of America, we have nothing like an excuse for war here. You already scoffed at the drug boats because we all know they don't know who they're bombing down there. They didn't even claim that, like, no, trust us. We have some really good, super secret intelligence about who these boats are. No, and we already know that they bombed some innocent people. Some fishermen that survived, they gave back no charges because they hadn't done anything at all. And so they had no even shadow of a pretext. You think about W. Bush lying us into Iraq War II, or even Netanyahu lying us into Iran in June. At least they lied, right? At least Bill Clinton pretended that Milosevic had murdered 100,000 Kosovar Albanians. Give me something, Trump. And here
is this Monroe Doctrine, Scott?
Don't like this guy?
I know, because I'm with you on this, because I don't think, our audience is very smart. None of I hope that anybody watching our show realizes it has nothing to do with drugs. It has nothing to do with narco-terrorism. You have to be an idiot to believe that. It has nothing to do with Tren de Aragua.
Well, if I may.
Hold on, finish my thought.
Okay.
So is this then about the Monroe Doctrine, the idea that there's some sort of a Chinese influence, there's some sort of a Russian influence in Venezuela, whether it's with oil and gas relationships, China building ports in Latin America? Is this come back to the Monroe Doctrine, as simple as that?
I don't know, but there's certainly no need for military force in order to keep old world nations out of the Western Hemisphere here. And, diplomacy can handle that just fine. America can play plenty hardball with far short of coups and certainly far short of aggressive wars. And I don't know who is advising Trump and telling him that, like, who's the Paul Wolfowitz in this situation? Is Marco Rubio telling him, this is going to be easy, boss, don't worry. We're going to knock it out in 3 weeks and you won't have to worry, it'll be a star on your legacy?
Yeah, Rubio is definitely the ringleader in this conflict right now between United States government and Venezuela. You can't tell me otherwise.
Instead of any potential danger at all. I mean, think about the possible downsides. If you're sitting in the presidency right now, someone's telling you to launch an aggressive war against a country with at least 100,000 man military force and a government that's popular, at least among the poor, at least among the people who haven't fled yet. And it's right. It's not like it's an alien regime. It does have some indigenous support in that country. And I don't know how tough a fight it'll be, but we're going to lose how many soldiers over this? Or somebody told him that we can just do it with airstrikes and we just get one good lucky strike on the guy, like when they tried to take out Saddam Hussein at the farm and missed on the night of the invasion of Iraq. I mean, this is crazy stuff. Panama is Panama. But I think Venezuela has got to be in it. This is not going to be like Panama in '89 at all. This could be a real contest. And I mean, obviously, they're no threat to our country here. But in terms of America's ability to just have our way and do whatever we want inside their country, I'm sorry, I am not a member of that religion. I don't know who could possibly convert me, especially after all this time. It's just crazy.
Right.
I think that it's worth rewinding the clock, though, towards the end of the first Trump administration when the Bill Barr Justice Department indicted Nicolas Maduro for these sort of nebulous charges about narco-terrorism and such. And so that indictment is live. The Biden administration tried to sort of work with Maduro in order to get some oil deals going because the economy was so terrible. But this does very much feel like Trump circling back to what he was not able to do in his first administration, which was, what did we even make of that, do you think? What could we get from it?
Yeah, I mean, well, so first of all, going back to what happened in the first administration was they completely failed in their attempt to put Juan Guaido in there. And they had what Justin Raimondo called the Chef Boyardee coup, where they kind of ginned up a riot over the supplies at the border. Remember that? And all this went nowhere because the right in Venezuela does not have popular support. At least, I mean, I can't speak for, all their recent poll numbers or whatever, but they had nothing like the mass of people behind them necessary to depose the president and force him out. And so the whole thing just completely fizzled away. Juan Guaido is considered to be a joke. He called for direct American military intervention in his country. Which imagine if Hillary Clinton said, Russia stole the election for Trump, so I demand China get in here and do something about it, right? She'd have been strung up for that. And this new Nobel Prize winning lady, that's what she's saying too. It's time for America to get busy in Venezuela, overthrow the government with military force, whatever collateral damage, not even worth a mention, to install me in power, please. I mean, this is completely nuts. And whoever's selling the president on this we need good investigative reporting on exactly what narratives they're pushing to him and what it is that he believes or any skepticism he's shown toward this. I mean, obviously the buildup is very ominous.
So you guys have heard of the bearskin hoodie, right? It's my favorite hoodie. It's the one I'm wearing right now. It came down from Wyoming.
No.
Redacted to 36912. Heard this now from multiple sources at the White House that Marco Rubio is really the driver here in Venezuela in this push for this, whether it's some sort of land invasion or otherwise. So he seems to really have President Trump's ear on this. It's coming from Marco Rubio, sticking his hands in this, of course. And this was one of the first things that Marco Rubio did when he was pushed, nominated, and became Secretary of State. Flew right down there. So this makes sense. Does it surprise you that Marco Rubio, at the heart of trying to move us towards war with Venezuela?
No, he's absolutely the worst. And, you know, even though we don't have any literal neoconservatives in the administration right
now. One thing I would say, yeah, Rubio does, Scott already nailed on the head on the coffin right there, because I was just about to say, yeah, he embodies that old neoconservatism ideology. Like, Rubio is a war hawk. By every metric, he's a war hawk. So he wants regime change. He wants war. He wants this to get ugly. He wants this to get bloody. Every bit. You back? Things getting hot. I think I should have turned my computer off, my PC off earlier. We back? Yeah. So anyways, all I was saying was, yeah, so this is Marco Rubio has every bit. I forgot to turn my PC off earlier. That's probably why I'm having so many crashes right now. This thing's probably overheating. I'll probably have to end the stream a little bit sooner than I thought. But we're going to just skip to the last two things. I'll skip to the last two videos. But what I want to say is, yeah, Marco Rubio, he's driving. I'm going to put my face up here right quick. Yeah, so he's the driving force of this. He is literally it's a personal vendetta for him when it comes to Venezuela. It's personal for him. He's not gonna let up. He's not going to stop. He's going to keep pushing, and especially keep pushing for like this war to happen with Venezuela. So it's very much a personal vendetta for him because of his ties to Venezuela, because his family's from there. He's Venezuelan. I'm a Venezuelan American. So this is very much a personal vendetta for him, and he would love nothing more than to see Maduro toppled, arrested, and then a puppet ruler comes in the place. A puppet regime comes in, and then we're pushing pro-America, pro-democracy in Venezuela. We're beating another communist country. That's just, and it's just like, what's the point of doing this right now? Like, there's no financial incentive, there's no benefit really, because like I've mentioned earlier, Venezuela's not even the top when it comes to cocaine manufacturing, fentanyl manufacturing. None of that even happens in Venezuela at all. Literally, that's Colombia more they're thinking of. That's Peru, Bolivia. Venezuela's not the top. It's not the top drug manufacturing in South America. It's not even the top when it comes to being for the drugs that are trafficked through Venezuela. It's not even to the highest degree at all. So that's just complete horse shit right now. It's just a push for more war. That's all. Very similar to the days of the Iraq Gulf Wars. That's all it is. So I'm very much not in favor of this. I'm very much against this, and I hope that we can avoid this as much as possible. American lives don't have to be lost just to benefit and partake in a regime change. So that's that. But yeah, my PC is overheating a little bit, so that's probably why I'm having so many bad signals. I know I just fixed this fucking internet. But let's go ahead and move on. So we're gonna go to probably say that. We're gonna probably cover up some more of it tomorrow on the chill stream. So let's get to the last two videos that I want to show you guys.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says the U.S. has carried out its 10th deadly strike on an alleged drug smuggling boat in the Caribbean. Pete Hegseth says the U.S. has carried out its 10th deadly strike on an alleged drug smuggling boat in the Caribbean. He says all 6 people on board were killed.
CNN right here. Our good friend CNN. You never go wrong with the left's media.
From Congress. Mr. Trump also denied that the US sent a B-1 bomber like this one to fly near the coast of Venezuela on Thursday. Flight trackers clocked it about 80 kilometers from the mainland. It's not clear if the aircraft entered Venezuelan airspace. But the show of force and soaring tensions have Venezuela on edge. Its government have been holding military drills as President Nicolas Maduro issued this message in English.
Not war, not war, not war. Just peace, just peace, just peace. Forever, forever, forever. Peace forever. No crazy war.
CNN contributor Stefano Bozbon is live for us in Caracas. That was a pretty clear message there from Maduro. What else are you, or have you been hearing from Venezuelan officials?
Well, Christina, described in terms of carrots and sticks. That is, of course, a reference to a phrase by the late U.S. President Theodore Roosevelt. Well, Maduro is also equally skilled in both carrots and sticks because just a day before he made that English language plea to Donald Trump, this is what he had to say about the potential for open confrontation with the U.S., which would likely mean an air attack from Washington into Venezuela. Take a listen.
Cualquier fuerza militar del mundo.
Any military force around the world knows the power of the IGLAs. And Venezuela has no fewer than 5,000 IGLAs in key air defense positions to guarantee peace.
He was, of course, making a reference to air defense Russian missiles that Venezuela has acquired in recent years and used to prop up its air defense. Also, in terms of, again, the carrots and sticks, the carrot that we're registering today, Christina, is the release of at least 17 Colombian citizens who have been wrongfully detained here in Venezuela. Of course, that is a triumph of the president of Colombia, Gustavo Petro's strategy to sort of show his support for Maduro in front of this confrontation with the U.S. The U.S. instead are sticking, frankly, to the stakes with these latest strike. It's the 10th that we're registering in the Caribbean and Pacific waters. That also means that 43 people, Christina, 43 people have been killed since this confrontation began. The White House is insisting that all of these people are, of course, narco traffickers. They have yet to present any proof, Christina.
And of course, in all of this, it's the Venezuelan people who are caught in the middle of the conflict. The Norwegian Refugee Council says 1 in 4 Venezuelans now need humanitarian aid. What are you seeing, Stefano?
Yes, of course, this is the country that remains in deep economic trouble, no matter how you see it, no matter how you look at it, no matter the effort to lift U.S. sanctions on its oil exports from the administration here in Venezuela. Well, Venezuela remains in deep trouble. We spoke with several Venezuelans since we came here earlier this week. One, for example, told us that he had to give up his job on the same week that this confrontation with the United States began because his mother broke her pelvis in a home domestic incident, and that he had to care for her because they don't have the money to look after her. And of course, the public health system here in Venezuela is in disarray. This is a country whose currency has devalued almost 50% since the beginning of this confrontation, this new campaign from the White House. So it's a good point to point out and to highlight that in the middle of this confrontation, there is, of course, millions of Venezuelans who are still reeling from one of the most devastating economic crises registered anywhere in history in a country that is not at war. And you can probably read more about it on our website with our reporting here from Caracas. Christina.
Yeah. Definitely something that is not talked about enough. Stefano, we appreciate it. Thank you. And as we get this news of a 10th deadly strike on alleged drug smuggling boat, let's dig in deeper now with Juan Gonzalez. He is the former White House National Security Advisor, Senior Director for the Western Hemisphere in the Biden administration. He is now a resident fellow at the Georgetown Americas Institute. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, Juan, we know the US has never been a fan of the Venezuela administration, but why go after them so heavily now? What's your read of this?
Well, certainly. I mean, right now, the Trump administration has moved from what seems like a counter-narcotics operation to active kinetic ops and political warfare against Venezuela. As has been mentioned, since September 2nd, there have been 10 lethal strikes, killing at least 43 people. What's concerning right now is that the president has said explicitly that the U.S. does not need formal declaration of war from Congress to strike what he calls narco-terrorists, and he has elevated drug cartels to ISIS in the Western Hemisphere. Now, the strategic implications of these are one that the president has basically signaled that he's going to rely on executive war powers, and the ISIS framing really opens up a broader set of legal and operational toolkit, like covert ops, as the president has mentioned, strike authority. So what we're going toward is a next phase of escalation, going from maritime interdictions to possible strikes inside Venezuelan territory, all with the aims. Air defenses are not fixed; they're mobile. They would not stand a chance against the F-35s. But what it does underscore is that any sort of military intervention inside of Venezuela will not be easy. China and Russia also have strategic interests. They have intelligence bases there. They have economic interests there. But there's an open question about where Venezuela really fits in the level of priorities as they engage the United States.
The Biden administration, of course, called for new elections in Venezuela, even though Nicolas Maduro was defeated and went on to be defeated in a landslide by the Democratic opposition. The Biden administration did eventually recognize Edmundo Gonzalez as the president-elect, but it took them a little while. Why did they drag their feet on that for so long?
Well, I mean, the question was, there was a result of the election that was resounding in its election of Edmundo Gonzalez. Then there was a follow-on conversation about getting the proof, the counting of the ballots. So we were actually waiting for the institutional authorities to come out with a decision, but we moved fairly quickly to recognize Edmundo Gonzalez when it seemed clear that Maduro was not going to recognize the results of the election.
But by that time, he had been exiled, right? So it was too late, in effect.
Correct, but there were also previous announcements that said that clearly the Venezuelan people had made a decision in favor of Edmundo Gonzalez. What ended up happening was a formal recognition by the United States is really a formality. I mean, we'd actually recognized the results of the voting that had taken place on July 28th.
Do you look back on that, though, with some degree of regret, in some senses, that could have been, you know, if the US wanted a regime change in Venezuela, that was the time?
Certainly, and it's one that, you know, the support from the Biden administration, what it did was it allowed actually these elections to take place. It allowed the primaries to take place, and what it did was the result, even though not unexpectedly, Maduro did not allow an election where he did not control the outcome. It became pretty clear to the international community across the political spectrum from left, center, and right that Maduro had stolen the election. Now that there's a big leap between that and the idea of a military intervention by the United States. The United States does not have a good record this century or the last when it comes to military interventions and the restoration of order. I think a key question for the American public at this particular point is, you know, guaranteeing the security and the ability to govern of Edmundo Gonzalez, who was the rightfully elected president. Is that something that's going to take 20 or 30,000 U.S. Marines to actually guarantee that security? Is that something the American people think is the right path? Is that the right kind of cost that we're willing to pay when there are other routes? You know, negotiations aren't an easy path. They're not going to guarantee success. But when you look at similar processes around the world, it is a channel for dialogue that is necessary to avoid any sort of confrontation and actually promote viable and meaningful concessions by Maduro.
Yeah, and it's certainly interesting in light of U.S. intervention happening right now, isn't it, to consider where we are. Juan Gonzalez, it's always great to speak to you, great to get your perspective. We appreciate it. Thank you.
He's willing to give extreme levels of access to the oil reserves to the United States government, but even still, Trump is very much not in the realm of looking for diplomacy. So we're gonna watch this right here. This is right here. I want you to watch this video. This is important. This right here is just gives you the perspective of where we're at right now. This is gonna put you into. This is a real thing that's coming right now.
Breaking news, a dramatic U.S.-led escalation in the Caribbean, what the Navy calls the largest warship ever built.
I'll just give you guys a very clear perspective right now, because like this is a very real thing that people just don't understand. Like, yeah, war is coming. We are almost there, my friends, because they just deployed the world's largest warship to Latin America. This is from CNN. This was reported 6 hours ago, excuse me.
Breaking news, a dramatic U.S.-led escalation in the Caribbean, what the Navy calls the largest warship ever built, along with fighter jets, heading to the waters off Latin America. The administration claims the goal is to stop international drug traffickers. The provocative move comes as the Pentagon announced another overnight strike on a suspected drug boat. The 10th strike in 52 days, at least 43 people killed in total. And President Trump telling reporters these attacks may just be the tip of the iceberg.
I think we're just going to kill people that are bringing drugs into our country. Okay, we're going to kill them. You know, they're going to be like dead.
And CNN is reporting tonight that the president is considering plans to target cocaine facilities inside Venezuela. Now, the lack of transparency about these plans, especially the deadly attacks on alleged drug boats, have an increasing number of Republicans doing something they don't do much these days, criticizing the Trump White House.
We already been over this right now. There are no cocaine facilities. Nearly. Aren't you? I've already brought it up earlier. There's no coca cultivation or processing labs are mapped or quantified in Venezuela, unlike neighboring Colombia. There are none. I've already read that up over earlier. This was reported from the World Drug Report 2025. There are none.
White House.
The administration needs to give insight into Congress. That's part of it.
Now, of course, could there be like smaller underground drug facilities? There's a possibility of that, but as far as the reports go, there are no big cocaine drug facilities in Venezuela.
If this was happening with this level of insight under the Biden administration, I'd be apoplectic.
And as tensions spike across the Caribbean, President Trump is now just hours away from leaving for a high-stakes trip to Asia, where he's scheduled to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping. The first meeting since President Trump was reelected, and it comes as U.S. China relations are now at their lowest point in years. Kristen Holmes is out front live at the White House. Kristen, the president has been focused very much on these strikes in the Caribbean, but he is about to have one of the most important meetings of his second term in Asia.
Yeah, there's a lot internationally going on for the president as he embarks on this trip. And just to dive into what's happening in the Caribbean, I mean, you mentioned this warship, these fighter jets, all of this really represents a potentially massive military escalation. I mean, this is not happening in a vacuum. It's happening at the same time President Trump has confirmed that the CIA is operating in Venezuela. He has said a number of times and increased the rhetoric around the idea of land strikes in Venezuela. Now, of course, we have reported that all of this is part of a broader strategy to eventually oust Maduro. But White House officials say the president is considering a number of options. One of them you mentioned was this targeting of cocaine facilities. I do have to note, Venezuela is not known as a major source of cocaine. So that's just something to keep in mind as the administration has tried to link Maduro to these drug trades. The other one that they were considering is striking actual drug trafficking routes. But again, President Trump has not made any decisions. And we should say that while these escalations, these tensions are rising in one region, there is a lot of hope that President Trump's trip to Asia is going to help de-escalate tensions in another, particularly that relationship with China. I mean, we have been in what we've all been a part of, this kind of back and forth trade war since President Trump was sworn into office. The relationship between China and the U.S. is at an all-time low. And there are a lot of people who are deeply concerned that we are on the wrong track and that we're going to lose other allies in the region who want to trade with China. So this is an opportunity for President Trump to work with those allies as well as to sit down face to face with President Xi. But Dan, I'll tell you, they are really trying to manage expectations on that sit down. Maybe they learned from the sit down with Vladimir Putin in Alaska that they shouldn't get ahead of their skis.
Yeah, I'm guessing there's a lot to learn there. Kristen, thanks so much for your reporting. Appreciate it. Reed, it's so good to see you. What do you think, let's start in the Caribbean, where I just left off. What do you think of this massive military buildup? Is it really about drug trafficking or about trying to force regime change in Venezuela, or both?
Dana, you're focusing on the right issue. It is a massive buildup and a massive escalation. Look, we probably now have more troops in that area than at any point since the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Wow.
So you're talking about 10,000 American troops, 8, 9 major carriers. And it is unclear what the purpose is because...
Hold on 1 second. Cut off from... Bruh. Yeah, I gotta get this shit a rest or something. Fucking dang it. This damn thing here. Sorry about that, y'all.
It would be very important to have thought through the entire sequence of events that are going to take place, how this is going to work out. Donald Trump, in many ways, came to power breaking with Republican orthodoxy by pointing out that the Iraq war had been a fiasco, by pointing out that the Libyan intervention had been a fiasco. He had been initially in very Donald Trump-like way, he had been in favor of the intervention, sort of, and then when it turned sour, he said the Libyan intervention was a mistake and Gaddafi should have stayed in power. All of which is to just say, if there is a move toward regime change, if this is some kind of a quiet or escalating war to get Maduro out of power, you'd wonder if thought through the day after, the week after, the month after, because Venezuela could easily collapse into chaos. And then, if you think we have seen a lot of Venezuelan migrants, we ain't seen nothing yet.
Yeah, it's so interesting and important that you say that, because I was thinking about that same dynamic, that this is a man who has been saying, I want to end wars, I want things to calm down, and it's not necessarily definitive that he's trying to start a war. It could be a show of force, it could be a lot of different things, and moving such a huge military presence into the Caribbean. But is there evidence that those steps that you're describing the day after, or what would happen if Maduro is actually overthrown, or if he steps down, what would happen?
Well, we have the opposition leader, Machado, who just won the Nobel Prize and who's been very supportive of Trump and, in fact, said she dedicated the prize to him, which was all a very clever political way of keeping him engaged and supportive. But just remember, there's always in these regimes, I mean, this is what we learned in Iraq and Afghanistan, there's always still the remnants of the old regime, the army, the secret police, who are going to mount an assault on whatever new government comes into power. There will be a kind of civil war there. Have we thought all that through? I wonder, by the way, Dana, if this is part of the reason Admiral Halsey, the ranking admiral, resigned in a slightly mysterious way, that he felt like perhaps there was some of this escalation taking place without without thinking it through. I'm not sure, of course, I'm speculating, but it was a very strange and abrupt resignation.
Let's turn to China and more broadly the Asia trip that the president is about to take. It's a very high stakes meeting that he is going to have with President Xi. And you say the bullying approach that President Trump has used to get his way won't necessarily work with China for a very specific reason. What is it?
Well, Trump actually is very smart about understanding when he has leverage and when he doesn't. So with a place like Venezuela, a small country, poor country, the U.S. is vastly more powerful militarily. He knows he can push. With China, he has been very careful. Every time he's escalated and the Chinese have pushed back, he's backed down. He did it after the Liberation Day. He's done it more recently. So I think he understands that the Chinese have a lot of cards as well, and that they can play them. And the Chinese regime is almost set up for this kind of thing better than almost any other regime in the world. They are willing to take the pain. They are willing to inflict pain on their people. They have an economy that they are developing consciously to be more decoupled and less integrated with the West. So in some ways, some of this actually plays into the book that Xi Jinping is trying to play anyway. I think Trump knows this, and that's why he's not escalating willy-nilly with the Chinese.
All right, that's that right there. Hold on 1 sec. So these two videos right here, Marco Rubio's obsession with Venezuela, and then we're gonna I want to show you guys this. So tomorrow on the show stream, we're gonna go over these 3 videos. We're gonna continue this on from tomorrow. Give you guys a little bit more breakdown, and then we're gonna cover some cultural stuff. Talk about what's going on right now. I'm going in it a little early because like my PC keeps fucking acting up right now. I keep losing signal on OBS. So yeah, I'm gonna end the stream right here, and I'll be back tomorrow for my chill stream 5 o'clock. Exactly. Be here for 5 o'clock. We're gonna go live at 5. Okay. So I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good rest of your night. Enjoy your Friday. Like the video and leave a comment. You know the deal. See you guys.